In this video, I'm playing the Dugtrio-line in Pokemon FireRed. Solo challenge rules can be found in the description. I'm pretty excited for this run because earlier in the year when I played Dugtrio in Pokemon Yellow, it did decently well, so I'm hoping that here it's going to have similar results. But of course I have to start as a Diglett, and this thing is really frail. It has 10 HP, 55 attack, only 25 defense, although it is very fast with 95 speed, and it has decent special stats for a ground-type Pokemon with 35 special attack and 45 special defense. This line has the option between two abilities in Generation 3, Sand Veil or Arena Trap. Both of them are not really relevant for solo challenges, and I think that Sand Veil is just slightly better, so I went with it. By the way, I should mention that the hidden ability for this line is Sand Force, which increases the power of rock, ground, and steel type moves during a sandstorm by 30%. That is a great ability, and hopefully in the future I will get to use it. Diglett starts with Sand Attack, Scratch, and Growl, and then through level up it learns Magnitude at level 9, Dig at level 17, Fury Swipes, which is useless, Mud Slap, which is also going to be useless, and then Slash at level 31, and Earthquake at level 41. A Ground-type Pokemon learning Ground-type moves, it feels really good when this is the case, and that is not always what I'm dealing with, especially in games like Crystal. It really feels to me like Generation 3 they started to have a sense of what they wanted movesets to look like, and then by the time Generation 4 came around, Pokemon really did start getting access to the moves that they needed to perform at least decently well. Through TM and HM, the Diglett line has some coverage through moves like Sludge Bomb and Aerial Ace, and if you add the tutor moves to this, then I also get Rock Slide, so those are going to be decent moves for the playthrough. I think the one drawback to this species is just how frail it is, and the fact that it doesn't get any moves to help it set up. I think this Pokemon would absolutely tear through the game if it got a move like Sharpen or Swords Dance, but without the ability to set up, other than Substitute, which I will talk about later on, I'm going to have to rely on levels to overcome every threat. The first of which is Brock, so let's talk about how I'm going to prepare for him. Diglett has the medium fast growth rate, and this is going to allow it to level up at kind of an average pace in the early game. I want to make sure my training here is focused on giving me the best performance in the late game, so I'm going to defeat Pokemon on Route 22. The reason I'm doing this is because Mankey show up here and they provide me with attack EVs. And there is nowhere else in the early game where I can earn these. It's mostly just speed and HP EVs. I intentionally did this training on wild Pokemon to ensure that I was able to defeat the bug catchers inside of the forest with Diglett. With my HP stat being so low, even teams of 2 or 3 Pokemon early into the game are threatening. Things get easier for Diglett once it reaches level 9 and learns Magnitude. Same type neutral damage is great against the Weedle line, and honestly it's okay against Caterpie, especially when I roll good magnitudes. If you didn't already know how this move works, it has a variable power which basically just gets randomly assigned. Here's a chart showing the powers and their corresponding probabilities. Its average power is 71, and it's going to be great against Brock. But I'm going to hold off fighting him because I want to get a little bit more experience, so I backtrack to Route 22 and face the rival. I figured that by level 11, this fight wouldn't be a problem, and I was honestly wrong. Scratch does about 1/3 to the Pidgey, maybe less, and then I get hit by Sand Attack, and I start missing. Twice in a row, Pidgey uses Tackle, Scratch takes it to yellow health, and I am able to knock it out in 3 turns, which is good, but I only have about half health left over for the Squirtle. But I'm going to use Magnitude against it. Great. I miss. It hits me. I miss again. It hits me again, taking Diglett down to 6 HP. Magnitude 7 brings the Squirtle to yellow health, and I just barely survive its tackle with 2 hit points. If I miss on the next turn, I'm going to lose. Magnitude rolls the best possible damage, and it does hit, so Squirtle goes down and Diglett's victorious, but that was way too close. This left my confidence shaken just a little bit, so I decided to continue my training and level up to level 13 over a damage rounding threshold before facing Brock. His first Pokemon is Geodude. I go for Magnitude. It doesn't knock it out, but he just chooses Defense Curl, which does nothing, and then I knock it out on the next turn. Only Onix is left. Rock Tomb, while resisted, does have the highest effective power, but Diglett, in a callback to Generation 1 and its incredibly high crit rate in those games, gets one here against Brock's Ace and one-shots. Okay, so the first gym leader was easy. I probably overtrained for that one, but it doesn't really matter. The Boulder Badge gives me a 10% boost to my attack stat, which is perfect. This is going to accelerate my progress at least through this section of the game until a bunch of Intimidate users start showing up on the enemy's teams. I also get the TM for Rock Tomb, which I am going to teach to Diglett right away, but I want to avoid using this move just because of its trash accuracy. For now though, it does give me an answer to Flying type Pokemon, and the rival's Pidgeotto with Sand Attack can be quite problematic. Okay, so on Route 3 and in Mount Moon, I'm going to do a bunch of training because Misty is next and I'm going to need levels to defeat her. In Generation 1, Dig is really broken because it has base 100 power, but in Generation 3 it only has base 60 power. After the same type attack bonus, this is going to be an effective power of 90, which is good, but I'm not sure if Diglett's going to do enough damage to two-shot the Starmie, and if it doesn't, it'll take 2 hits. While I have comparatively decent special defense, my HP stat is so low that I really just don't want to take damage. Inside of Mount Moon, when I have the chance to learn Dig, I had to make a choice between the moves that I wanted to keep and the ones that I wanted to give up. Right now I have Magnitude, Rock Tomb, Scratch, and Sand Attack. I figured getting rid of Scratch made the most sense so that I could have more PP and same type attack bonus moves and just use Rock Tomb to cover Pokemon that are immune to ground moves. If you're wondering why I'm keeping Sand Attack around, sometimes this can help you squeeze through tough scenarios, but overall I think that this is the mistake. I should have taught Dig in its place and kept Scratch. The reason is that I continue my training in Mount Moon and this depletes more of Rock Tomb's PP. By the time I finish off the mandatory Rocket, I only have one more use of this move and then I go up against the Super Nerd. This mistake that I'm making is because I don't have a lot of experience in Generation 3 and I play way more Generation 1 where Pokemon abilities do not exist. I knocked out the Grimer and then I realized that I do not have a way to take care of the coughing unless Rock Tomb gets like a critical hit and one-shots. Because I wasn't anticipating this being an issue, I'm just gonna black out here and go back to the center before Mount Moon. This is a little bit of a setback, but luckily in Generation 3 you have repels for the cave, so it doesn't take that long to make it all the way back to the Super Nerd. With my PP restored, Rock Tomb is now able to manage the coughing, and I make my way into Cerulean City. I don't think it makes any sense to go up against Misty right away. There is no advantage to that play, so I'm gonna go for the rival first. He leads with Pidgeotto. This thing is so annoying. I hope I'm gonna 2-hit, and yes, Diglett has the damage range. It's a little bit unfortunate that it hits a Sand Attack before I knock it out, and then I start missing against the Squirtle, which is actually really bad because it knows Water Gun, and this starts doing a lot of damage, taking Diglett out, giving me my first reset. In the next fight, things go my way with the Pidgeotto choosing Quick Attack instead of Sand Attack. That's perfect. I knock it out for free and move on to his ace. Now, if you're confused why I'm using Magnitude instead of choosing Dig, I'm just trying to gamble and get a Magnitude 10 or 9 and hopefully 1 or 2 shot the Squirtle, but I think I should have been using Dig here to deal more consistent damage. Either way, it works out for me this time. All that's left are Abra and Rattata. They're both very weak, so Diglett has won. Because Misty is such a threat and evolution is just around the corner, I think it makes sense to do enough training to ensure that I evolve before facing her. Evolution increases Diglett's base stats by 25 points each. Yes, every single stat increases by the same amount. I love it when this happens, not just for the symmetry, but also because it's very easy to remember. That gives Dugtrio 35 HP, 80 attack, and 50 defense, 50 special attack, and 70 special defense, and 120 speed. By the way, Dugtrio actually got a stat increase starting in Generation 7, where the developers gave it 20 more attack for a total of 100. While this does break the beautiful symmetry that I just mentioned, I think it makes a lot of sense. A glass cannon like this with only 80 base attack is just not going to be very usable. Giving it a little bit more offense improves what it can be capable of. In the future, I think I'll backport the stat boosted Dugtrio into Generation 1 just to see how it does. I think the rival's Cloyster overall will just be so much simpler with more attack. I'll need many less levels in order to ensure the 2-hit ranges. In Misty's gym, after defeating the junior trainer, I have enough experience to level up to 26. I timed that perfectly, and then Diglett evolves into Dugtrio. Now, let's take on the second gym leader. Staryu is up first, I go for Dig, and even though Misty's water type uses Harden, I still have enough damage to knock it out. Next is Starmie. I have the Person Berry in case Water Pulse confuses me, but I didn't even need it because Dig just one-shots. Alright, that was a lot easier than I was expecting, and the next gym leader is definitely not going to put up more of a fight. Before I get to him though, I have to go through the SSN. I'm going to pick up Rest here just to be safe for the late game in case I need a recovery move. I always do this in my first playthroughs because once the SSN sails away, there is no way to get this move back. And for a Pokemon like Dugtrio, it is its only access to recovery, so it's better to be safe than sorry. Unlike in Generation 1, there is no Body Slam TM here, so I'm just going to pick up berries in the kitchen and then go up against the rival. I was once again worried about the Pidgeotto using Sand Attack. This time though, Dugtrio has enough damage to knock it out with 1 Rock Tomb. From there, the rest of his team should be simple. His Squirtle has evolved into Wartortle, but Magnitude rolls Magnitude 8 and just one-shots. Okay, so goodbye rival. And with him out of the way, it is time to head towards Rock Tunnel. The optional trainers here are never a threat in FireRed, but I can pick up some useful items, for example the TM for Aerial Ace. This move is quite good coverage for Dugtrio because it allows me to have super effective damage against grass types, and Erika is coming up next. Well, technically, but I can skip her until just before Giovanni like in Generation 1, so she shouldn't be a problem either way. Because of Dugtrio's limited move pool, I think it makes sense to just teach Aerial Ace now so that I have it for coverage whenever the need arises. Also, in Rock Tunnel, once I get to the tutor, I am going to teach Rock Slide in the place of Rock Tomb. This gives me both more power and accuracy. Plus, in Generation 3, it does have a chance to flinch, which is not a thing in Generation 1. The Rocket Hideout is next, and this is where I want to talk about Intimidate users. When you're using a physical attacking Pokemon, this ability is so annoying. If the enemy's lead Pokemon has it, then there is no way to bypass the stat change. You might think that holding a White Herb would help, but there are none of these items available in FireRed. The only way to get one is to trade with Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, but of course that's not allowed for these challenges. The best way to counter this ability is just to use Substitute, but even this strategy doesn't help in the case that their lead Pokemon has Intimidate. An example of a prominent team like that is Blaine with his Growlithe, but today he shouldn't be an issue because of my typing. Giovanni is next. I roll Magnitude 8 against the Onix, one-shotting. That's pretty good. Next is Rhyhorn. I go for Magnitude again, rolling another Magnitude 8 and getting another one-shot. Perfect. Kangaskhan is last. Now this thing is actually very scary because Mega Punch hits so hard. It does just under half. My Dig is doing about a third, so if it doesn't get a critical hit, I should survive. It just chooses Bite, which does even less damage because it's a special attack, and with that I've defeated Giovanni. In the department store, I think it's time to check in on Dugtrio's EVs. Like I said before, there are so many HP and speed EVs available in the early game. I currently have 32 for HP and 79 for speed. Also, there's a lot of defense EVs available because I have 59 of these by this point, but only 28 attack and even less in my special stats. 18 in special attack and 5 in special defense. For Dugtrio, since it doesn't get access to any of the TMs for the game corner, I can spend my money on vitamins, which is typically not the case in these runs. I buy 4 protein to increase its attack stat. Now let's talk about the rival in Pokemon Tower, because there's an interesting thing happening with his team. If I had gone up against his Bulbasaur teams, then he would have 2 Intimidate users, a Growlithe and a Gyarados. But when he has Wartortle, his water type slot is already filled, so he doesn't have Gyarados. Even though Intimidate is really scary, I thought that this would be the hardest team for me to face because Blastoise is just so much better against Dugtrio than Venusaur is, largely because of the coverage moves I have. I can hit Venusaur with super effective damage from Aerial Ace, and I can hit it with neutral damage from my powerful same type moves. Right now as a player, I'm thinking that the Blastoise team in general is the strongest team that you can go up against with the rival. The Charizard team tends to be a little bit stronger in Sylph, which is the next battle, but after that it really falls off because the Charizard loves to spam Scary Face, and you can just set up Substitute so that that move never hits you. The rest of Pokemon Tower is obviously not an issue. Even though the ghosts have Levitate, I have enough coverage with Rock Slide and Aerial Ace to manage them. They are very frail with weak physical defenses. At the top of the tower there are some annoying rockets, but like what can these people do to Dugtrio? Well, there's a coughing and it has Levitate, so this is annoying. I'm gonna have to knock it out over 2 turns with a move like Aerial Ace. I didn't want to risk the accuracy on Rock Slide for a little bit extra damage. Coughing survives the hit, of course, and then it chooses Self-Destruct, which is a powerful physical move, but I should survive this. I'm over leveled. But the coughing gets a critical hit, and Dugtrio actually faints. I cannot believe that I lost here. Of course I didn't save before this trainer, so I'm just gonna black out so that I don't have to repeat a large section of the game. This reminds me of a lesson that I learned a long time ago making these solo challenge videos. When I was producing Tauros versus Kangaskhan, I just liked playing Kangaskhan so much more, and that's because it has a higher HP stat. A little bit more bulk always makes things feel more consistent and just more enjoyable to play. When you're playing a risky Pokemon that has low HP and high attack with high speed like Dugtrio, every fight can be a little bit sketchy and you need to be careful. This time the rocket isn't a problem. I level up to level 38 and now I can learn Slash, a normal type move, which is going to be decent for Dugtrio. If you're wondering why I didn't teach Secret Power up until this point, I just didn't feel like it was needed, and it's so generic I want to avoid it if I can, just for a little bit of flavor. While Slash isn't as good as it is in Generation Generation 1, it's still nice to get the boosts to damage every once in a while. And Secret Power, which can cause paralysis on most terrains, is just not that useful for Dugtrio because usually the paralysis is good so that you outspeed, but I'm already gonna move first. Cycling Road is a great place to do additional training to raise Dugtrio's levels. Early on the route I get poisoned and have to use my last antidote, and then when I'm facing Biker William, who has 5 Pokemon, I get poisoned again. This is a bad scenario because I'm going to be taking chip damage every turn. And by the time I make it to the Wheezing, I only have 3 hit points left over. So yeah, this is a loss. Luckily I saved right in front of him so I can just reset. Now I do want to note here that I only have 1 Pecha Berry, so if I'm going to fight Hiker William again and use this item, I will not have it for Koga. But that shouldn't be an issue because once I defeat his team, even if I have to use the Pecha Berry, which I do by the way, the first coughing poisons me. Anyways, he's not a problem this time. Then I make it to Fuchsia City, and this is where I can use the move tutor to teach Dugtrio Substitute. I put it in the place of Slash because this move doesn't really give me coverage outside of the other moves I already have. I quickly make my way through the Safari Zone as well as all the trainers in Koga's gym, and then I face the poison type specialist. Okay, so ground type isn't great here because most of his Pokemon have Levitate, but with Substitute I can block Smokescreen and Toxic, and not be poisoned by Sludge, and Self-Destruct from the Coughings is essentially a free knockout. The Muck on the other hand is an issue because it loves to spam Minimize, and I'm going to be using Dig against it. This ends up taking a while because Koga heals with his Hyper Potion. I have to re-establish my Substitute, but eventually I do knock out his second Pokemon. Coughing is next, I spam Aerial Ace against it, and it self-destructs right before fainting, breaking my Substitute so that I don't have one in place for the Wheezing. Now this Pokemon does not know self-destruct in the remakes. I figured that maybe I can just go for Rock Slide and knock it out. I didn't want to set up my Substitute and then have it broken by Sludge right away. Here's the thing, Rock Slide doesn't have enough damage. I thought I could use Aerial Ace to then chip away at the Wheezing and use one more Rock Slide to knock it out, but this doesn't do enough damage, so the Wheezing survives and knocks Dugtrio out. Looking back on that fight, I think I misplayed, but in the moment I was quite scared of it repeating, so I decided to go back to Celadon City and face Erika. By cutting the center tree in her gym, I can face this cool trainer, and she has 5 Pokemon on her team, so it's great experience. I figured this was enough training because I'm over-leveled, so now let's face the gym leader. Her first Pokemon is Victory Bell. I go for Aerial Ace for super effective damage, and I get the 1-hit. Okay, so I don't need Substitute here, I can just sweep. It's a simple fight, and with that I earn myself the 4th badge. Rather than backtracking to Koga's gym, I decided to go to Saffron City next. Here, I can face all of the trainers in the fighting dojo for some quick experience with Aerial Ace, and I can continue my training against the Rockets in Sylph. I have one close battle here, but luckily it doesn't end up in a reset or a blackout. Now, I've been finding that fighting Rival 5 at level 50 tends to be the safest bet with most Pokemon, providing they don't have another way to get around his threatening Pokemon like Bulk Up or Swords Dance. The training I've done so far has brought me to level 49, and I figured this was close enough. On the Pidgeot, I'm going to set up Substitute, this way it can't hit me with something like Feather Dance. After that, I go for Rock Slide, and it does enough damage to get the one-shot. Next, he chooses to send in Blastoise because it has super effective damage. Now, I really want to get a 2-hit against this thing. I go for Dig dodging its Water Gun, but then the Blastoise uses Protect, so it looks like I can't use Dig against it because it's just going to counter it every time I go for it. I'll use Rock Slide instead just because it has a chance to flinch. But of course, I miss once. That's really annoying. Luckily for me, I get a critical hit on the next turn, so Blastoise goes down anyway. That leaves only the Execute, the Alakazam, and Growlithe, all of which are not problems for Dugtrio. As I go up against Giovanni, I do want to mention the fact that the Earthquake TM is not available in Sylph like it is in Generation 1. To get this item in Generation 3, I'm going to have to defeat Giovanni's gym battle. And apparently he's going to cause problems here first. The gym battle is going to be easier because he won't have the Kangaskhan, but when he does have this normal type, he is actually able to defeat Dugtrio once. It is rare to lose here in this battle. By the way, the reason I lost is because I was getting a little bit overconfident, thinking I didn't need to spend time setting up Substitute. Because of that, I got poisoned. Instead, if I just set up Substitute right away, then I'm going to be able to make it through his team. Also, I prioritize Rock Slide on the Kangaskhan just so I can flinch, and it ends up coming through for me. Okay, reflecting on this section of the game, I think it would have been wiser for me to level up 2 more times, maybe with rare candies to get to 51, so that I could have Earthquake for both the Rival and Giovanni. Since I'm here in Saffron City, I might as well go and face Sabrina because Dugtrio has incredible speed. Also, I want to draw your attention to this intro because I am very proud of it. Okay, her first Pokemon is Kadabra. I one-shot with Earthquake. Her second Pokemon is Mr. Mime, and once again, I one-shot with Earthquake. Her third Pokemon is Venomoth, of course a water-grass type, but Earthquake hits it and still does enough damage because it has the same type attack bonus. So I am moving on to the final Pokemon, Alakazam, but don't worry, it's extremely frail. Dugtrio gets a fourth one-shot, completing the clean sweep. With her out of the way, I'm going to backtrack to Koga. I have so many more levels now. With Substitute in place, I'm able to easily make it through his team and earn myself the Soul Badge. With it, I can use Surf outside of battle to head to Cinnabar Island. I assume the next section of the game is going to be fairly simple for Dugtrio, but after that comes Rival 6, who's quite challenging, and then Lorelei. I want to make sure that I'm preparing for these threats, so I'm going to do some training in Pokemon Mansion as well as Blaine's gym. This brings Dugtrio up to level 54, and then I face the Fire-type Specialist. As I said before, Growlithe is his lead, meaning I lose my attack stat right at the beginning due to Intimidate. I then try to set up Substitute, but the Growlithe breaks it right away, so I'm gonna knock it out with Earthquake and move on to the Ponyta. I didn't think I would be able to establish Substitute here either, because the Growlithe knocked mine out, so just take care of it with Earthquake. Rapidash follows, I'm of course faster, so I continue my attacking spree, knocking this Fire type out as well. But that leaves Arcanine, and I don't have a Substitute, so I can't block its Intimidate. With my attack stat lowered 2 stages, Blaine's Ace survives a hit on Red and strikes back with Fire Blast. But Dugtrio has okay special defense, and this allows it to hang on. Because of this, Blaine gets stuck in a healing loop and he can't get out of it. Even though my PP is low, I have enough moves to finish off his last Pokemon. Okay, this gym definitely wasn't as straightforward as I figured that it would be, but I think that Giovanni is going to be easy. In FireRed, he really isn't good. We're just going to skip right into that battle. I know it's kind of abrupt since we just defeated a gym leader, but there really isn't anything else to say. Okay, his first Pokemon's Rhyhorn. It breaks my Substitute, which is unfortunate. I'm just going to knock it out with Earthquake and move on to his second Pokemon, which in this case is Dugtrio. This is the mirror match. It's only level 42 and I probably could have established my Substitute here, but that seems unnecessary since I have super effective damage against his 3 remaining Pokemon. The Nidoqueen, the Nidoking, as well as his ace Rhyhorn all fall to single hits. As expected, this was a really simple victory for Dugtrio. But the rival on Route 22 is next, and in the late game, all of the rival battles are the hardest parts. To start things off in this battle, I set up my Substitute and block Feather Dance. Then I go for Rock Slide, taking the Pidgeot down to red health. It just tries Feather Dance again, and then I knock it out. Next, he sends in his ace Blastoise. Notably in this battle, its only damage-dealing Water-type move is Water Gun, but it's still enough to break my Substitute. Also, Earthquake is doing less than half, which means it survives my next hit and uses Water Gun, taking Dugtrio down to 17 hit points. This means I am able to finish off his ace, but I'm not in a great position for his remaining Pokemon. And the Execute, which is a grass type, is next. I figured Aerial Ace would be enough here, but it's not. Execute survives and uses Stun Spore. So this loss is very unexpected after making it by the Blastoise. I figured I would be fine at that point. But it turns out the Pidgeot doesn't always just spam Feather Dance. When it is attacking, things can go worse, and then I don't make it by the Blastoise. I could use my rare candies here, but I want to save them for a little bit later. I want to do training in Victory Road, so I level up more in preparation for Lorelei. So for now, I'll fly back to Cinnabar Island and fight some of the trainers east of the city. I don't spend long here, gaining only 1 level up to 58 over the next damage rounding threshold. This doesn't give me the 1-shot for the Pidgeot or the 2-hit on the Blastoise, but interestingly enough, the turns line up in a way that the Blastoise doesn't choose Water Gun, instead it goes for Rain Dance, so I knock it out and have green health left over. Because of this, I can re-establish my Substitute on the Execute and block all of its status moves. Dugtrio crits the Execute, allowing it to 1-shot, and from there, the spree just continues. In Victory Road, I fight a total of 4 trainers, bringing Dugtrio up to level 61. Also, just after I exit the cave, I want to draw your attention to 2 items that I'm picking up all of the time. I found out about these when doing the streams with Exceptional at the beginning of this year. There is a Lumberry over here, as well as a Max Elixir up here. These items are both quite useful during the league, especially if you're doing the rematches, which in today's video I will be doing after I clock in. Okay, Lorelei's next. I'm going to prepare for her by using my 11 rare candies to boost Dugtrio's level from 61 up to 72. By the way, I'm using these now because I'm prioritizing my finish for the first league attempt over my finish for the second league attempt. So if I get stuck there because I used these rare candies too early, I don't really care. It'll be annoying because I have to play through it, but for all of you, just know that I'm trying to prioritize the finish that actually ranks the Pokemon, not the finish that I'm just doing for experience and fun. Okay, so now it's time for the Elite Four. Lorelei is first, her Dugong is the lead. I go for Rock Slide because it's super effective, and I figured I might flinch it, and I actually do, which is really convenient. Although the damage range is so good that Lorelei uses a full restore, so I have to knock it out over 2 hits. I choose Aerial Ace first so she doesn't heal it again, and finish it with Rock Slide. Next is Cloyster. Now it's kind of awful in the first league attempt. Its moveset is Spikes, Protect, Hail, and Dive. I've said this many times. I figured that I could just set up Substitute here, and in the end I was correct. The Cloyster doesn't really do anything, and then I knock it out. Okay, Slowbro. This thing's moveset is much better in Generation 3, although it is taking chip damage from the hail, which is nice. Earthquake's doing more than half, it breaks my substitute with Surf, and then I finish it off. Time for Jinx. It's so frail, I figured that I could just attack here, but I'm gonna go for Substitute because it likes to use Lovely Kiss, and I felt I could block this move, but instead it attacks, likely due to damage ranges. So I lost some health for free, and I have to finish it with Earthquake because I don't want to try to set up again. That leaves only Lapras, and unlike in Generation 1, it doesn't have moves that can miss, so I've just lost here unless I get a critical hit, and Dugtrio doesn't. I can get luckier against the Slowbro though, because if I establish my substitute here, then the Slowbro can go for Amnesia or Yawn, both of which don't really matter. In this case, it raises its special defense twice, and I finish it with 2 Earthquakes, so I have a substitute for the Jinx. Because of this, I can one-shot the Frail Psychic type, move on to the Lapras, which will not be able to knock me out in 1 turn, and as a result, Dugtrio is able to win on its second attempt against Lorelei. This result is much better than I was expecting. Okay, it's time for Bruno, the Generation 2 trainer, who actually got better since his debut generation. In FireRed and Leaf Green, he's actually quite scary if you're weak to him, but in this case he starts with an Onyx, a free place for me to set up Substitute, and after that, Earthquake has massive damage. Of course, even though Aerial Ace is super effective, it's not going to do more damage, but it is still on my set for a reason, because once Bruno is defeated, I have to go up against Agatha. She is so much better in these games when compared to her Generation 1 counterpart. She is known for very trolly strategies in that game, but in this game her ghosts have Levitate, so ground moves are not effective here at all. Instead, I'm going to have to rely on Rock Slide as well as Aerial Ace. But Substitute gives me a way to block all the annoying status conditions like Confuse Ray, as well as Poison from moves like Poison Fang as well as Sludge Bomb. Yes, the Gengar does actually have same type attack bonus moves in this generation. Dugtrio doesn't have any problems here, and with that I'm moving on to the final member of the Elite Four, Lance. In Yellow version, this Gyarados was so annoying to defeat with ground types, but in these games it doesn't even know a water type move. Its moveset is Hyper Beam, Dragon Rage, Twister, and Bite. I just take my time here establishing Substitute, doing some damage with Rock Slide, re-establishing my Substitute, tanking a Bite, and then knocking his lead out. He prioritizes sending in Aerodactyl next. I miss a Rock Slide, but it loves to set up with Scary Face, so it's stuck spamming this move as I take it out for free. This is the reason that Substitute is one of the best moves in this game. Next is Dragonite. I can just barely not do half to it, and while it does break my Substitute with a Hyper Beam, unlike in Generation 1, it has to recharge. Yes, in Generation 1, if you break the opponent's Substitute, you do not need to recharge. Hyper Beam is so broken in those games, it has so many weird behaviors that I haven't even had a chance to talk about it on the channel yet. With the Dragonite defeated, he only has his Dragonairs left, and he uses some healing items on them, which delays my progress, but overall, these Pokemon are not threatening. In most cases, the move I'm worried about is Thunder Wave, but of course I'm a ground type, it doesn't matter. So, with Lance defeated, there is only one more trainer left before Dugtrio clocks in. You probably already understand how I'm going to play against the Pidgeot, set up Substitute to block its moves like Sand Attack and Feather Dance, then I'm going to use Rock Slide to knock it out, and helpfully he uses one full restore here, which means he's not going to have one later on for the Blastoise. Actually, not that much later on because of super effective damage, he sends it in next. In this case, it no longer knows Water Gun, it now has Hydro Pump. But a benefit for Dugtrio is the fact that Earthquake is doing more than half, and then the Hydro Pump misses. Now, Blastoise has a Citrus Berry, it eats hits this, but Dugtrio still has enough damage and just knocks it out in 2 turns. Alright, I guess that's how I'm gonna win. Next is Executor. It loves Sleep Powder, which can't affect me, so it's free. I'm faster than Alakazam and have good physical damage, so it goes down. And from there, the Rhydon and the Arcanine I have super effective damage for, and my substitute is in place blocking Intimidate. After the missed Hydro Pump and due to its damage ranges, Dugtrio is able to take a very confident victory over the champion and clock in with a first playthrough time of 1 hour 28 minutes and 5 seconds, with 6 resets, 2 blackouts at level 75 with a game time of 5 hours and 27 minutes. Before ranking Dugtrio, let's do the post game. I am timing this as its own independent section for now, just so that I can work on this portion of the game, because I do intend to include it in my rankings later on down the line. This part of the game opens up a lot of options for some Pokemon, specifically Sludge Bomb, but I don't think that that's going to be useful for Dugtrio. Its current set is what I want to go into the second league attempt with. There is one other move available here, which is Body Slam, but I don't really want to be relying on chances to paralyze, so like I said, I'm going to keep this moveset. Dugtrio is relying on Substitute in combination with its raw damage to have success in this run, so I invest my time in doing extra training that I normally would just skip right now. I think in rematches, Lorelei, Agatha, Lance, and the champion potentially could be problematic if I'm not getting the damage ranges I need. At the end of the Heavy Islands plotline, I'm level 81, so I'm going to see if this is enough to defeat Lorelei. Luckily for me, things start off easy because the Dugong just likes to set up double team, giving me a free substitute. From there, the Cloyster doesn't break it because it also tries to set up, and I knock it out for free. But the Piloswine that's next survives Earthquake, and because of that, it's able to break my substitute before I take it down. I didn't want to get into the same scenario that I had last time, so I just one-shot the Jinx and move on to the Lapras. I have full health, so I'm hoping that this is going to be enough to survive one of its attacks. And I am able to, so Dugtrio defeats the Lorelei rematch on its first attempt. This was a really good performance. I'm happy with this. And it looks like I'm going to have to do it again, because in Bruno's chamber I open up my bag and I only have 1 full restore left over. The only solution now is to black out and then defeat Lorelei again. Technically, since I am timing this segment, I'm not going to use things like save states to avoid problems like this. Plus, that doesn't really feel like a fun way to play the game. There needs to be some way that I'm punished when I make mistakes. It might feel right now that I'm setting up Dugtrio for absolute failure against Lorelei the second time around, but no, it actually just defeats her again and moves on to Bruno. He should be simple, right? He's the one trainer I did not mention out of the other Elite Four members when going over who I thought might be problematic during my league rematches. Well, things start off annoying against the Steelix because it doesn't go down to 1 hit. He heals it, but luckily Dugtrio crits, knocking it out. Hitmonlee's next. I one-shot it and move on to Hitmonchan. But it's slightly more defensive, so it hangs on with a sliver of health, and yeah, it goes for counter and knocks Dugtrio out in 1 turn. Dugtrio actually has the damage range to sometimes knock out the Hitmonchan, so I just re-roll damage in the next fight and knock it out in 1 turn. After that, the Machamp survives, dealing massive damage, but Dugtrio hangs on with red health and finishes it. But in this situation against the Steelix that's next, I don't think I'm going to be able to knock it out, and that is true, so I get another loss here at Bruno. Okay, this video is teaching me something. I think in the league rematches, Bruno might actually be the strongest trainer. Maybe the champion is better. I know that Lance is not as good because there's some AI manipulations that you can do around his Thunder Wave with Substitute. Also, those won't work for Dugtrio, which is why I think he might be slightly challenging. But here on Bruno, there's really nothing you can do, at least nothing that I'm aware of, that I can do to play around things like this. I just have to make it through the fight with more health so that I can survive the Steelix's attack and knock it out over 2 turns. But that doesn't work either because the Steelix uses Iron Tail, crits, and Dugtrio faints again. You know how I just said I'm not sure how to play around his team? Actually, I came up with an absolutely brilliant strategy. Okay, so here's how it goes. On the Steelix, well, okay, it misses Rock Tomb. That's just handy for me. Don't worry, my strategy doesn't involve luck. On the Hitmonchan, I need to get the damage range so that I knock it out in 1 hit and don't get hit by counter. Then on the Machamp, it needs to miss Cross Chop so that I have full health left over for the final Steelix, and by doing things this way, I can take an extremely lucky victory. Yeah, I have no idea how to solve this fight, but I made it through like that. We're going to keep going. I'll come back to Dugtrio in these games later on and have to optimize this. I'm deferring the pain so that future Scott has to deal with it. I said that maybe Agatha was going to be difficult. My reasoning for this is that Aerial Ace is kind of falling off. It's only a base 60 power move, and her movesets also are greatly improved for this battle. But in the end, Substitute is enough to carry me through, and I defeat her without problems. Okay, what about Lance's Gyarados? It still does not know any water type moves. It also doesn't know any flying type moves, so it just has random stuff like Hyper Beam, Dragon Dance, Earthquake, and Thunder Wave. It will not use the last move on me because I'm a ground type like I said before. That means I'm most scared of Dragon Dance getting really set up and then it hitting me with Hyper Beam, but I don't give it time for that. Next he sends in Kingdra, which does know water type moves. I thought it was going to go for Dragon Dance so I could get my Substitute up for free, but this is a logical error because if it goes for Dragon Dance once and then attacks, it'll just break my Substitute, not giving me an advantage. Also, Earthquake is not two-shotting the Kingdra. It survives with red health and breaks my Substitute anyways before I knock it out. I'm in not a particularly good position for the following Dragonite, which is his ace. It has Ice Beam, so it breaks my Substitute as I try to establish it. I guess I'm just going to have to use Rock Slide, and it's doing about a third, and I will not survive 2 Ice Beams. That means Dugtrio has to get a flinch, and it doesn't. I tried again and the same scenario plays out, so I'm going to use the final 2 rare candies that I picked up in the Sevi Islands to boost Dugtrio up to level 86. I thought maybe this would give me the 2-hit on the Kingdra, but unfortunately it just barely isn't. That said, I was able to establish my Substitute on the Gyarados, so it's still in place and I can tank damage here, giving me more for later into the battle. Also notably, after 2 Dragon Dances, the Kingdra is still not moving first against Dugtrio, but Lance heals it with a full restore, which is quite annoying. This gives it the time it needs to use 1 Surf before it goes down. And that's really annoying. I once again don't have my defenses set up for the Dragonite. So please come through for me, Rock Slide, get a flinch, but it does one better than that, instead getting a critical hit, knocking the flying type out in 1 turn. The second Dragonite does not know Ice Beam, instead it has Flamethrower, also Earthquake, but this is doing about 1/3, and I have better damage ranges against it, so I can 2-hit with Rock Slide. The only Pokemon left is Aerodactyl. I'm faster, Rock Slide is super effective. So let's see how Dugtrio does against the final trainer in the game, the rematch of the champion battle. As everything gets set up for the start of the fight, I want to ask you a question. Which Pokemon on his team is going to cause the most problems for Dugtrio? Think about your answer right now. I'll give you a little bit of time. So you're probably saying the Blastoise, right? At least that's what I was thinking. With my former damage ranges, I didn't think that Dugtrio would have enough to be able to knock it out in 2 hits. That means I'm going to have to survive a Hydro Pump after it breaks my Substitute. The Heracross is giving me a free opportunity to set this up. It goes for Rock Tomb, but it's not going to break my Substitute, at least I don't think it will, and I have Aerial Ace that can finish it in 1 turn. Okay, so Blastoise, let's see how this goes. I choose Earthquake, and surprisingly it does way more than half. Then the Water type breaks my Substitute with Hydro Pump as expected. It eats a Citrus Berry, but that doesn't heal nearly enough health, so I take it out on the next turn. By the way, in Generation 3, the Citrus Berry only heals 30 HP, so at higher levels it's less effective. This was changed in Generation 4 so that it heals 1/4 HP. Okay, so the answer is not Blastoise. It's actually the Pokemon that's next, the Executor. I cannot set up Substitute here because it's not choosing Sleep Powder, instead going for Giga Drain, which breaks my Substitute right away. I wanted to knock it out, so I go for Aerial Ace, which does what looks like less than half, but that doesn't matter either way because it chooses Giga Drain again, draining my health, taking Dugtrio to the red. Therefore, I can't knock it out, and that's that. Dugtrio takes a loss. I tried again just attacking with Aerial Ace instead of trying to set up Substitute, but in this case it uses Sleep Powder, puts my ground type to sleep, and with that I get a second loss. This champion battle is much different than the first one. By the third battle I thought maybe I need my Substitute for the Executor. The Blastoise is eventually going to miss with Hydro Pump, so maybe the answer is to spam Substitute until it misses, then use a second Earthquake knocking the Water type out, and then spam Aerial Ace against the Executor, hopefully taking care of it. This doesn't feel very good. I do manage to take care of the Blastoise, but I don't have a Substitute and now I'm at red health. Although Dugtrio comes through with a critical hit, mirroring its Generation 1 form, and Executor, no, it survives and finishes me off. Of course it does. So that is a third reset against the champion. In the next battle, my Substitute strategy works. I make it to the Executor with my defense in place and green health. This is good. Aerial Ace does more than half. Executor uses Giga Drain, breaking my Substitute and also healing killing it. But as long as I can take it out over the next 2 turns and survive the Giga Drain, I should be good. And I do survive the Giga Drain with 3 hit points. With a stylish critical hit, Dugtrio makes it past the grass type, and I'm really glad. I think from here things should be easier. Alakazam is of course a 1-hit. Tyranitar activates Sandstream, but it's just going to be a 1-hit because it's a rock type. No, it's actually not going to be because it has decent defenses. It survives with the tiniest sliver. And yeah, that's another reset. So even when I luck through the Blastoise and make it past the Executor, I can't defeat the Tyranitar because my level is just slightly too low. I am almost 100% sure that level 88 would have given me the win in that fight. I was a bit thrown off here. I kind of fumble around against the Executor, use my substitute in the wrong place, then I get put to sleep, and the next battle spirals out of control. In the end, the victory that I'm going to have here is the Blastoise missing Hydro Pump. Then, on the Executor that follows, I just spam Aerial Ace, knocking it out in 3 hits. Because the Blastoise missed its first Hydro Pump, I now have more health, so I can survive the hit from Tyranitar and move on to the Arcanine. Well, theoretically that's what could have happened, but in this case I just have better damage against the Tyranitar, so it faints. I guess last time I got an unfavorable roll. With it defeated, there's only Arcanine left and I have full health, so this is a victory. Dugtrio's second league time is 34 minutes and 15 seconds, with 10 resets and 1 blackout because of my silly full restore mistake. This is at level 87 with a game time of 7 hours and 9 minutes. It is almost time to rank Dugtrio. Before that, I just want to say thanks to everyone who supports me on YouTube through YouTube memberships or on Patreon. The direct support really does allow these videos to be possible, so again, thank you so much, it means the world to me. Now, let's rank Dugtrio. With its first league time being 1 hour 28 minutes and 5 seconds, it earns itself a placement at the very end of the B tier. It's just under 2 minutes behind Venusaur and just over 2 minutes behind Blastoise. Those 2 runs were very close, by the way, only 24 seconds separates them. That said, I have gone back and played all the starters again, and their times will improve dramatically. And with a little bit more experience under my belt playing this Dugtrio run, I don't think its results will improve as much when ranked again. After all, it had 6 resets when it beat the champion, but Venusaur had 17 and Blastoise had 20. Still, for a Pokemon that can't set up, I think that these are respectable results. Okay, so what's next for the FireRed series? Well, things are going to get very exciting, because this is the last video before October starts, and I like to make the final 3 months of the year as special as possible for all of you. All of October is going to be themed around Halloween, so I will be only playing Pokemon that are Dark, Ghost, Bug, or Poison types. With one notable exception, I can also play with zombie Pokemon, and that means fossils. And starting on October 1st, I'm going to use all of the Generation 1 fossils in FireRed. Aerodactyl, followed by Omastar, followed by Kabutops. It has been a long time since I used these Pokemon, and I am really looking forward to seeing how they do with Generation 3. If you've made it this far, you are incredible. Thank you so much. I will see you in my next video.